Hello friends, and welcome to my Paladin guide, which is now updated for patch 6.3. In this video, we'll cover a wide range of topics. This includes going over all of the Paladin's abilities and breaking them down, defensive theory and how to mitigate in dungeons and high-end encounters, the opener and rotation for all level ranges, damage theory, and the stat priority. If you're new to Paladin or have Paladin leveled and would like a greater understanding to how it plays, then this guide is for you. Without any further delay, we're going to dive right in, starting with the offensive abilities. Fast Blade into Riot Blade into Rage of Halone, Paladin's basic 1-2-3 single target combo, and Total Eclipse into Prominence. This is Paladin's basic 1-2 AoE combo, which is to be used on 3+ targets. At level 2, you'll unlock a Fight or Flight, which is pretty early, so let's go over it. This is an OGCD that will increase your damage dealt by 25% for 20 seconds on a 60-second cooldown. You'll be using this off cooldown to increase your overall damage output. At level 58, Riot Blade and Spirits Within have the additional effect of restoring MP. Spirits Within is a single target OGCD on a 30-second cooldown unlocked at level 30, which later upgrades to Expiation at level 86, an AoE OGCD with increased potency over Spirits Within. Due to this being on a 30-second cooldown, you'll use this on cooldown, but make sure to catch one during the Fight or Flight window and one without. While on the topic of the Fight or Flight window, we also have Circle of Scorn, an AoE OGCD unlocked at level 50, leaving a dot on all enemies caught, lasting 15 seconds, and this is on a 30-second cooldown. This is the same logic as Spirits Within. Use this on cooldown and make sure to catch it with every other Fight or Flight window. At level 74, you'll unlock Intervene, an OGCD that rushes to an enemy within 20 yards range on a 30-second cooldown and holds up to 2 charges. This is Paladin's Gap Closer. Ideally, you'll be using both charges under every Fight or Flight window, but save a charge if you know you'll have to disengage so you can get back to the boss sooner. At level 54, you'll unlock Goring Blade. This is a single target GCD on a 60-second recast. Make sure to always use this with Fight or Flight as they both share a cooldown of 60 seconds. Goring Blade will not break your combo. Rage of Halone upgrades to Royal Authority at level 60. At first, this is just increased potency, but at level 64, Royal Authority grants the Divine Might buff, and at level 72, Prominence also grants Divine Might. Divine Might allows the next Holy Spirit or Holy Circle to be casted immediately with increased potency. Holy Spirit is a single target GCD spell unlocked at level 64, and Holy Circle is the AoE alternative, which is unlocked at level 72. Holy Circle will be used over Holy Spirit on 3+ targets if the potency increased conditions are met, those conditions being under the effect of Divine Might or Requiescat. Rarely will you catch yourself using Holy Spirit or Holy Circle without these conditional buffs, but there are situations, like being disconnected from the enemy, or if you're using a specific rotation, then you will opt in to use Holy Spirits. Holy Spirit and Holy Circle initially will cost 2000 MP, but at level 64, the cost will be reduced by half to 1000 MP, and they can no longer be interrupted by damage. At level 68, you'll unlock Requiescat, a single target OGCD that grants 4 stacks of Requiescat, lasting 30 seconds. Each stack of Requiescat increases the potency of Holy Spirit, Holy Circle, and the Confitia combo. Pre-level 80, you'll use all 4 stacks on Holy Spirit for single target and Holy Circle for 3+ targets. At level 80, Requiescat will grant the effect Confitia Ready. This will allow the execution of Confitia, which is an instant cast AoE GCD, which you'll want to use one of your Requiescat stacks on. At level 84, Holy Spirit, Holy Circle, and Confitia will have an added healing effect. Then at level 90, you'll unlock Blade of Faith into Blade of Truth into Blade of Valor, all instant cast AoE GCDs with more potency than Holy Spirit or Holy Circle and an added healing effect. Blade of Faith combos off Confitia, and from this point onwards, you will use all 4 stacks of requiescat on these abilities. The Confitia combo abilities all cost 1000 MP each. That said, MP is almost irrelevant to paladins due to the amount of abilities that regain this. This will roughly look like this: Requiescat into Confitia, into Blade of Faith, into Blade of Truth, and then Blade of Valor. We will do more advanced openers and rotations later into the video though. It's worth noting that all of these spells will not break your combo, so if you're mid combo and you catch yourself using these spells, they will not break it, meaning after you're done using these abilities, you can resume your combo where you left off, but don't leave it too long. Combos will automatically break after 30 seconds. At level 76, Royal Authority grants 3 stacks of Sword Oath. Stacks of Sword Oath allow the execution of Atonement. Atonement is a single target GCD which restores MP with each hit. Depending on rotation, you'll either want to spend all Sword Oath stacks as you get them or skip out on stacks. For now, I suggest spending them as you get them, as this will make Paladin incredibly easy to play and beginner friendly, but I'll cover Atonement skipping later into the video. This means after every Royal Authority, your GCDs after should be 3 times Atonement and 1 Holy Spirit under the effect of Divine Might. Atonement will break your combo. Finally, we have Shield Bash and Shield Lob, both being GCDs. Shield Bash stuns the target for 6 seconds, but because this is on the GCD, I highly recommend not using it. There are a few niche situations like in dungeons as an emergency form of mitigation, but even then you're probably better off just continuing to DPS down the trash to kill it faster. Shield Bash will also break your combo. Shield Lob is a ranged attack with a 20 yarm range, with an added increase in enmity generated. This is mostly a dungeon exclusive attack, as there are much better ways for Paladin to attack from afar in high-end encounters, that being Holy Spirit and the Confitia combo once unlocked. That said, don't brush this off in dungeons, as it can be a good way to initially pull trash packs when doing pack-to-pack pulls. It's good to also throw in shield lobs while running to the next pack. This will keep your GCD rolling and increase your overall enmity on the pack. Also, shield lob will not break your combo. Next, let's move on to Paladin's defensive actions. At level 10, you'll unlock Iron Will. This is Paladin's tank stance. This will significantly increase the enmity you generate. We want to have this enabled when doing light party duties or main tanking in full party duties, and disabled when off tanking in full party duties. That said, in group content, it's a good idea to enable this even when off tanking when you've given the main tank enough of an enmity lead. The reason can be mechanically, like a tank buster targeting the second player in enmity, or just in case of an emergency, like the main tank dying, then at least you'll be the next in line to tank the boss. Just make sure to not rip aggro off the main tank. Pay attention to the enmity bars in the party list. Before we move on to the oath gauge, let's go over some basic damage reduction OGCDs. Rampart, Sentinel, Hallowed Ground, and Bulwark. Rampart is unlocked at level 8. This will reduce the damage taken by 20% for 20 seconds on a 90-second cooldown. Sentinel, which is unlocked at level 38, reduces damage taken by 30% for 15 seconds on a 120-second cooldown. Hallowed Ground, which is unlocked at level 50, this will make the Paladin invulnerable to most damage for 10 seconds on a 420-second cooldown. The most damage part means some attacks can go through this damage being boss ultimates and enrage attacks, ultimates being the signature moves, and enrages being the boss's enrage attacks, which are caused by not meeting the DPS check of a high-end duty. Finally, we have Bulwark, which is unlocked at level 52. This will block all incoming damage for 10 seconds on a 90-second cooldown. Paladins are the only tank with a shield and come with a natural block rate of 30%, with blocks reducing 20% damage per block. Damage mitigated by blocks do not reduce the damage of dot effects, so keep that in mind. Once we've gone over all of the defensives and utility actions, I'll give you a rough overview of how to use defensives effectively in dungeons and high-end encounters. At level 35, you'll unlock the Oath Gauge. Every auto attack increases the Oath Gauge by 5, and this holds up to a total of 100. The Oath Gauge abilities include Sheltron, Cover, and Intervention. These all cost 50 gauge each, and they are all OGCDs. Let's break them down. Sheltron reduces damage taken by 15% for 4 seconds on a 5-second cooldown. At level 74, Sheltron will be extended to 6 seconds, and at level 82, Sheltron will be upgraded to Holy Sheltron. Holy Sheltron reduces the damage taken by 15% for 8 seconds and has 2 additional effects. Knight's Resolve, which will further reduce damage taken by 15% for 4 seconds. This means for the first 4 seconds of Holy Sheltron, your total damage taken will be reduced by 28%. You might ask, why not 30%? Well, this is because 14 calculates abilities multiplicatively. This in turn benefits offensive abilities while deteriorating defensives, but don't think too hard about this as it's not a massive loss. Then we have Knight's Benediction. This is an added regen effect that lasts 12 seconds. At level 45, you'll unlock Cover. This creates a 10-yarn tether covering a selected target party member and will redirect any damage, debuffs, or knockback effects from the target to the paladin as long as they stay in range. This ability is rather niche, but it does see some use. Like if a player drops considerably low on health and an AoE is coming up, you can use Cover to save their life. That said, some damage sources will go through Cover. It's also worth noting that the paladin can still mitigate the damage through the covered party member with damage reductions and blocks, but Hallowed Ground will not work. At level 62, you'll unlock Intervention. This reduces damage taken by 10% on selected target party member for 6 seconds. Additionally, if the paladin is under the effect of Rampart or Sentinel, an extra 10% will be added to the intervention effect for a total of 20%. At level 82, Intervention will be extended to 8 seconds and has added effects. Knight's Resolve, which is the same name as Holy Sheltrons but slightly different, so don't confuse them. This further reduces damage taken to target by 10% for 4 seconds, which means for the first 4 seconds, the target will take 19% less damage. Then we have Knight's Benediction, which is exactly the same as Holy Sheltrons. This will give the target a regen effect lasting 12 seconds. That covers all of Paladin's defensive actions. Let's move on to the utility actions. At level 56, Divine Veil is unlocked. This creates a barrier around self and all nearby party members for 10%, scaling off the Paladin's maximum HP, lasting 30 seconds and has an additional heal effect. This is on a 90-second cooldown. At level 58, Clemency is unlocked. A single target GCD heal costing 2000 MP and has the additional effect of receiving 50% of the heal if used on another target party member. Just like with Cover, Clemency is very niche as it requires a GCD to use, and although the heal is good, it's not worth sacrificing a GCD over. I won't say to never use this, just use it only if you really feel you must. For example, your healer died in a boss fight, you can use Clemency to attempt recovering by taking on the role of a healer. At level 70, Passage of Arms is unlocked, an OGCD that will block all incoming attacks and create a cone effect behind the paladin, which will grant any party members who enter the cone a buff called Arms Up. This will reduce the damage taken by 15%. The paladin can keep this up for 18 seconds and it's on a 120-second cooldown. Moving or doing any other actions will cancel the effect, which in most cases isn't ideal because we want to keep our GCD rolling. That said, the initial snapshot of Passage's damage reduction, Arms Up, will last 5 seconds on party members. So positioning yourself in front of your party and using it just before a raid wide will benefit your team. It's also great to be used in downtime when there's nothing to be hit, but raid-wide damage is still happening. And finally, we have the crossroll actions. All of these actions are OGCDs. Low Blow. This will stun the target for 5 seconds on a 25-second cooldown. Most bosses resist stuns, but it's still a good tool for stunning AoEs and mitigating damage in dungeons and other content. Provoke. This will taunt the target, placing yourself on top of the enmity list, and has a 30-second cooldown. This is good for tank swaps and pulling, although paladins typically pull with Holy Spirit. Shirk. This will transfer 25% of enmity to target party member on a 120-second cooldown. This ability, along with Provoke, is typically how tank swaps are executed, which will look like this. Off tank will provoke off the main tank will then shirk the off tank, making them the new main tank. Interject. This will interrupt the target's spell if it can be interrupted. Has a 30-second cooldown. You can tell if a spell can be interrupted by the color and shape of the cast bar. You should see an example of this on screen. Reprisal. This will reduce the damage dealt by 10% to nearby enemies for 10 seconds in a 5-yard radius and on a 60-second cooldown. Reprisal is a highly versatile tool. It can be used for your own defensive capabilities or used on raid wides for your party's benefit in high-end content. Finally, we have Arm's Length. This will create a barrier around yourself that nullifies most knockback and drawing effects for 6 seconds. So if an encounter is going to knock you back or draw you in, popping Arm's Length is a really good idea to keep uptime. Additionally, if an enemy hits you with this up, they will be debuffed with a slow that will reduce their action speed and auto attacks by 20%, making it an excellent defensive cooldown in dungeons, although this additional effect doesn't work on most bosses and high-end encounters. Let's now move on to a rough breakdown of how to use our defensive actions effectively in dungeons and high-end encounters. In this section, I'll provide some examples, and these are merely suggestions. Over time, you'll develop your own playstyle and cooldown rotation. In dungeons, it's important to spread your cooldowns out between packs. This ensures you'll always have some defensives running for each pack, which in turn mitigates more damage and helps your healer out, allowing them to deal more damage. I'll cover some examples now. These examples will assume you are doing a wall-to-wall pull. Before level 50, your only defensives will be Rampart, Sentinel, Sheltron, Reprisal, and Arm's Length. That's still quite a lot though, right? In this case, I would open the pool with Rampart and throw in a Sheltron so my gauge isn't sitting at 100. Once Rampart expires, use a Reprisal and Arm's Length, and maybe a Sheltron again depending on your gauge or if you even need it. On the second pull, I would open with a Sentinel. Once Sentinel expires, throw in a Sheltron, and if Reprisal is back off cooldown, use this too. By this time, Rampart should be coming off cooldown, so if the pack is still alive and kicking, pop this. Also, Sprint. Kiting is a last resort option and should be avoided, but if you think it can save your life, you can pop Sprint and kite the mobs around in a small circle. This way you won't mess up your party's AoE DPS too much and can still effectively kite the mobs. This will delay auto attacks and abilities used on you. After that, it will be boss fight time. These typically won't require many of your defensives, but if you can get away with throwing some out, you may as well. After boss fights, you can always repeat your cooldown rotations from the previous 2 pulls. At level 50, the only addition here is Hallowed Ground. You can pretty much repeat the same cooldown rotation, except I would suggest opening the first pull with Hallowed Ground. This way you can have it back up again for the final few pulls of a dungeon. Be cautious of white mages though, as they will most likely holy the pack. This will stun all mobs for roughly 9 seconds, so if you have a white mage, I suggest opening with a Sheltron to mitigate any stray auto attacks during a white mage's holy spam. Then once the mobs are resistant to the stuns, go ahead and pop your Hallowed Ground. From level 52 to 60, the 3 additions Paladin has is Bulwark, Divine Veil, and Clemency. Repeat the previous level cooldown rotations, but now you can add in Bulwark to mitigate more damage. Maybe add it to your Reprisal and Arm's Length, or combine it with your Rampart. You also have Divine Veil. Although mostly a group mitigation, it has a short enough cooldown and can be used on yourself for a small shield and heal at no cost. Throw this in whenever you can. Clemency. You shouldn't have to use Clemency unless your healer died and you're trying to recover a run. Otherwise, your GCDs should solely be committed to offensive abilities. At level 70 to 80, the only addition here is Passage of Arms, which you could use to turtle yourself up during a pull. This is absolutely a last resort, as you wouldn't be able to do any damage during the effect. That said, if you think it's going to save your life and you have no other options, then this could potentially save you, but it really shouldn't come to that. From level 82 to 90, the last addition here is Holy Sheltron. Mostly everything can remain the same here, but given how strong of a defensive Holy Sheltron is, we can use this as a standalone cooldown for the first 4 seconds of a pull, and then proceed to go through our cooldown rotation. Next, let's talk about planning our defense defensives in high-end duties as a paladin. The things we need to actively mitigate as a paladin are tank busters, auto attacks, and raid wides. We also need to be aware when to spread our cooldowns out versus using multiple cooldowns. Tank busters, these are hard-hitting abilities on tanks, hence the name. Some of these are weaker and will only require a cooldown or two, while some are a lot stronger, requiring multiple cooldowns for one hit. We refer to this as kitchen sinking. Imagine a sink full of plates. That's what tanks do with their defensives, stacking them all in one place. This is good for strong tank busters and if another tank buster isn't happening for a while. Or we spread our cooldowns out. Don't go all out on tank busters, as sometimes tank busters can be less than 90 seconds apart, meaning if we were to use Rampart on one, the next tank buster we wouldn't have Rampart back up. So we would need another cooldown like Sentinel or Bulwark. Rampart, Sentinel, and Bulwark are your main defensive cooldowns for tank busters and auto attacks. Holy Sheltron can complement other cooldowns excellently, but can also be used as a standalone cooldown for tank busters and auto attacks. A high frequency of auto attacks can warrant a Rampart, Sentinel, or Bulwark usage, or if there is no tank buster in the next 120 seconds, why not use a Sentinel on some auto attacks, right? Also, make sure to take advantage of Hallowed Ground and try to get a use early into an encounter. Hallowed Ground has a cooldown of 420 seconds. This is 7 minutes. If you can get a usage early, you might be able to get 2 Hallowed Grounds in one encounter. And finally, take advantage of your Reprisal, Divine Veil, and Passage of Arms for raid wides. Paladin has the advantage of having 3 party mitigations over the other tanks who only have 2, so make sure to take advantage of this. Your healers will thank you. This is the kind of stuff that you must think about when planning a cooldown rotation in an encounter as a paladin or tank in general. Now let's move on to Paladin's openers and rotations. First, we'll cover some mock-up leveling rotations and then move on to the level 90 rotations. Level 50 to 60 are very similar. The only difference is pre-level 54 you won't have Goring Blade unlocked, so you can just exclude that, and pre-level 60 you won't have Royal Authority, but this just replaces Rage of Hallownate anyway, so just think of it like that. Open with Fast Blade into Riot Blade, then pop Fight or Flight into Royal Authority. Pop Spirits Within and Circle of Scorn into Goring Blade, then just repeat your 1-2-3 combo. Make sure to pop your Spirits Within and Circle of Scorn when they come back up, so you'll get an extra usage and they'll be back up for your next Fight or Flight window. Continue to repeat your 1-2-3 combo, then once Fight or Flight comes back up, make sure to pop it as soon as you can. Make sure to use your Goring Blade and fit in your Spirits Within and Circle of Scorn in the Fight or Flight window and just 1-2-3 away and repeat. For 3+ targets, just use your AoE 1-2 combo with Fight or Flight and make sure to use Spirits Within and Circle of Scorn. Level 70 will have Holy Spirit, Divine Might, and Requiescat, so things change slightly from the 50 to 60 rotation. We'll open with Holy Spirit, this is essentially 3 damage, and then proceed to Fast Blade into Riot Blade, pop Fight or Flight and Requiescat. This will catch the Requiescat damage within Fight or Flight. Then use Goring Blade, pop Spirits Within and Circle of Scorn into Royal Authority, then use Holy Spirit 5 times. The first Holy Spirit will be caught by your Divine Might, while the next 4 will be caught by your Requiescat. Continue your 1-2-3 combo while using Divine Mights on Holy Spirits when you get them. The neat thing about Holy Spirit is it won't break your combo. Because of this, if we see Fight or Flight coming off cooldown and we currently have a Divine Might, we can go Fast Blade into Riot Blade, pop Fight or Flight and Requiescat into Goring Blade, use the Divine Might we carried over into a Royal Authority, and then another 5 Holy Spirits. This will catch 1 extra Divine Might Holy Spirit in your Fight or Flight window. Although not always possible without delaying your Fight or Flight, which isn't something you really want to do, but it is a nice little bonus if you notice your Fight or Flight is coming up within the next 2 GCDs, just after using your Royal Authority. For 3+ targets, this is the same as 50 to 60. Level 80 will have Holy Circle, Intervene, Atonement, and Confitia, so things will yet again change from the 70 rotation. Open with Holy Spirit into Fast Blade, Riot Blade into Royal Authority, and then pop Fight or Flight with Requiescat into Goring Blade. Pop Spirits Within and Circle of Scorn, Confitia, Intervene, Holy Spirit, Intervene, and then use the remaining 3 stacks of Requiescat on Holy Spirits, and then proceed to use our Sword Oath stacks on Atonements, catching 2 out of the 3 within the Fight or Flight window. After that, continue to do your 1-2-3 combo, spending Divine Mights and Swordo stacks as you get them, and pop your Spirits Within and Circle of Scorn when off cooldown. Burst windows after the opener won't look much different. In some situations, your last few GCDs within Fight or Flight might only be a Savage and Riot Blade, while other times it could be a Royal Authority and Divine Might Holy Spirit. For 3+ targets, use your 1-2-3 combo and then Fight or Flight with Requiescat. Divine Might your Holy Circle, Spirits Within and Circle of Scorn, Confitia, and then use the remaining 3 Requiescats on Holy Circle, and then continue to 1-2 with your AoE combo until Flight or Fight is back off cooldown. Level 90 will complete our kit with Spirits Within upgrading to Expiation, and unlocking the rest of the Confitia combo, Blade of Faith, Truth, and Valor. This won't drastically change from the AT rotation except for a few things. Like always, we'll open with Holy Spirit into Fast Blade, a Strength Potion, Riot Blade into Royal Authority, pop Fight or Flight with Requiescat, Goring Blade, Expiation with Circle of Scorn, Confitia, Intervene, Blade of Faith, Intervene, Blade of Truth, Blade of Valor, Divine Might, Holy Spirit, and then use our Swordo stacks on Atonement, once again catching 2 out of the 3 within our Fight or Flight window. From here, continue like you would if you were doing the AT rotation, spending Swordo stacks as you get them and Divine Mighting your Holy Spirits, using Fight or Flight and Requiescat as soon as they come off cooldown, into Goring Blade, Confitia combo, and then using any filler GCDs you have, prioritizing Divine Might, Holy Spirits, and then Atonements. You can always hold on to a Divine Might before going into your burst window, and it is highly recommended to do so. It's worth noting that if your GCD is lower than 2.45, late weave your Fight or Flight a GCD earlier than Requiescat, or delay Requiescat a GCD. This way you'll get 9 GCDs under your Fight or Flight. As of patch 6.3, it's not worth aiming for 9 GCDs under Fight or Flight with full best in slot gear, but not everyone is best in slot. So if you do have this GCD, take advantage of this. This could potentially change in patch 6.4 with the final raid tier gear. If it does, you can expect an updated rotation video. I'd now like to go over some theories surrounding rotation recovery and atonement skipping. We'll begin with the atonement skipping. Skipping atonement in favor of a Royal Authority and Divine Might Holy Spirit within your Fight or Flight window can be a viable technique when playing in a coordinated group setting, as you'll benefit more from raid buffs. The con to this is you'll lose more overall atonements while not gaining any extra Divine Might, Holy Spirits, or Royal Authorities, as you're only pulling existing Holy Spirits and Royal Authorities and rearranging them into the Fight or Flight and raid buff window. Another con is this requires a little bit more brain power over the standard loop, but there's an easy trick to this, which is if Fight or Flight is under 10 seconds as you use Royal Authority, usually around 7 or 8 seconds, use 1 atonement and then go into your Savage and Riot Blade. By this time, your Fight or Flight and Requiescat should be back off cooldown if your GCD is at 2.50. If it's any faster, you can use 1 extra atonement here and have the same result. For clarity's sake, the reason for the lack of a potency difference, a stronger Fight or Flight window but losing 2 atonements per minute versus a weaker Fight or Flight window but not losing any atonements. The variables behind this math can be never ending and can be completely down to your encounter kill time, for which is the higher potency of the two. From my understanding, it seems to be like this: atonement skipping equals higher RDPS, which is raid DPS, because you're pulling higher potency resources into your burst window and your party's raid buff. And the standard rotation equals higher ADPS, which is personal DPS, because you're gaining more potency from the lost atonements. The bottom line is to do whichever is more suited to your party and you are most comfortable with, as the difference is minimal to non-existent. Rotation recovery on Paladin is fairly straightforward. As long as you use your Fight or Flight, Requiescat, and Goring Blade together, along with Expiation and Circle of Scorn, so in the event of downtime or dying, just carry on your rotation like normal. If you were atonement skipping, you might have to revert to the standard rotation to realign yourself. Let's finish this guide up with the stat priority. Weapon damage. This is the most important stat as it increases all damage dealt significantly. Strength. This is the second most important stat. Just like with weapon damage, strength increases all damage dealt. And now the substat priority. Skill speed. This reduces the recast timer of your GCD and increases dot damage. This could be argued the most valued stat, as it's important to reach certain thresholds to meet specific GCD recasts. As of patch 6.3, Paladin wants no additional skill speed, but if this changes in a later patch, I'll make sure to add a pinned comment in the description below and have an updated rotation video like mentioned earlier. If you see no pinned comment, then try to ignore this stat. Critical hit. This increases your chance to crit and the damage your crits do. It's a 2-in-1 stat, which makes it Paladin's, if not most jobs, #1 valued substat. Direct hit. This increases your chance to direct hit, which is basically just a weaker critical hit. But you can direct and critical hit the same attack. Direct hit is the second most valued stat for Paladin, as tanks don't have direct hit on their gear naturally. For this reason, it's easier to break through stat tier thresholds without as many diminishing returns as normal. Determination. This increases damage dealt, and it's a good stat, but mostly a filler stat when melding. Tenacity. This increases damage dealt and reduces damage taken by a very marginal amount. The lowest on the stat priority, as the other stats are just flat out better, so avoid melding this. And with that, this guide is concluded. Thank you so much for watching the video. This was one hell of a guide to make and a completely new approach for me, so if you did enjoy the video, then I'd really appreciate you showing that with a like and a subscribe. If you have any feedback on this guide, then please do not hesitate to leave it in the comments below. This will give me a good idea if this guide is the right approach moving forward. There are a few extra ways to support me in the description below, check those out, but I'll leave it at that. So with that, I'll catch you in the next one, but until then, take it easy, stay safe, we out, goodbye.